Hello, beautiful souls, and a happy New Year's to you. So, I'm doing a letter correspondence with someone right now about recovering from Neo-Advaita, and a very important topic came up. So, to review, there's 6 primary schools of philosophy in Hindu. It's not even really Hindu, in Sanatana Dharma. That means the underlying philosophy from which Hinduism sprang. And Hinduism is more the religious aspect of Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma means the eternal truth or the eternal way. And that's what Hindus called their religion before English-speaking people gave them the name Hindu or Hinduism. So there's 6 primary schools. And all the schools are kind of intermingled to a certain extent. The primary, in many ways, the primary school is Vedanta. Not Advaita Vedanta, just straight Vedanta. And Vedanta means, we'll get to Advaita in a moment, Advaita Vedanta. Vedanta means the final knowledge or the ultimate knowledge or the culmination or completion of knowledge. So it's really, in essence, Vedanta is the school, all the schools are focused on enlightenment. Well, that's not true. I think 5 of the 6 are, but Vedanta is in many ways considered the main, one of the main schools. But that's another topic. Okay, so Vedanta means the culmination of knowledge or the final knowledge. And so it's understood to mean enlightenment or moksha. And it's also understood to mean the culmination of the Vedas. The Vedas are the first text of Sanatana Dharma. Many people have probably heard the expression, the Vedas. So here's where things get interesting. There's not agreement in Sanatana Dharma what that final knowledge is. Neo-Advaita teachers have lied to us. They have said, this is the final knowledge. This is the ultimate knowledge. And what they've taught is Advaita Vedanta. But guess what? Like many things in Neo-Advaita, they were lying. All they're sharing is their opinion what the final knowledge is. Because in Sanatana Dharma, in Hinduism, again, I don't even want to say Hinduism, in the underlying philosophy, there's roughly, oops, knocked over my cup. Welcome to live video. There's roughly 7 schools of Vedanta, 7 sub-schools of Vedanta, and they each have their own opinion what the final knowledge is. We have been taught Advaita, and we've been taught that that is Vedanta, but that's a lie. Advaita is a sub-school of Vedanta. And I've said before, so what is Vedanta? Vedanta is based on 3 texts, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and the Brahma Sutras, which are all, each of those texts are an expansion of the Vedas. So we're going to put the Vedas aside for now. They're each an interpretation of those 3 texts. Adi Shankara, yes, he did meditate, he did practice, he had a spiritual, and so he's the founder of Advaita Vedanta. He did have a spiritual experience, and then he took that experience and he looked at the text and he came up with his own interpretation of them. But so did all the other 6 other sub-schools of Vedanta. Very quickly, they're Beta Beta, Dvaita, Achinta Beta Beta, Vishna Advaita, Ashkar Purushottam Darshan, Tatvada, and Suddha Advaita. And in one of those schools is actually dualistic. There's one school that says, no, reality is not non-dual. It's actually completely dual. That's one of the minority schools. The other schools, so there's even though there's 7 different schools, there's kind of 3 basic answers. Reality is non-dual, creator and creation are separate. That's what most of us who grew up in a religious home grew up with. Then there's non-dual, there's no difference between creator and creation. That's what we've been taught in Neo-Advaita, and falsely taught that that's the ultimate truth and the ultimate that all the sages of the ages have been talking about, which is that's bullshit. It's just one interpretation. And then there's qualified non-duality. So here's non-duality, and then there's qualified non-duality. That might be something like this: one yet distinct. Here might be non-duality, no distinction, no distinction. Then maybe that's non-duality, no distinction. Qualified non-duality says one yet distinct. And there's different schools of qualified non-duality. So I'm harping on this because when I realized this, and then as I shared before, so there's like the Sanatana Dharma texts, then there's Adi Shankara's interpretation of them, then there's Ramana Maharshi's interpretation of Adi Shankara, which is the interpretation of text. Then we have Neo-Advaita's interpretation of Ramana Maharshi, whose interpretation of Adi Shankara. It's so watered down. What we were taught in Neo-Advaita satsangs is so far removed. It's so far removed from what Ramana taught. It's completely, there's almost no connection between what Adi Shankara taught. And there's practically zero connection between those 3 primary philosophical texts. So this can sound very heady. But the thing is and Neo-Advaita says, drop the mind, but that's also a lie. They don't teach people to drop the mind. They teach people to drop beliefs that are contrary to the Neo-Advaita teaching. They don't say drop the mind. When they say drop the mind, what they're actually saying is drop everything other than what I tell you, which is a fancy way of doing brainwashing. Let go of every thought other than the thoughts I tell you. See, most of us didn't realize that these people weren't enlightened. And so we trusted them and just believed everything they said. It got me in a lot of trouble, and it got this person in trouble. Let me see if I'm going to read anything else from their letter. One moment. So, yeah, actually, I think that's all I have. Oh, hey, Martin. Hey, man. Hola. Martin is saying hello from Spain. Thank you so much for saying hi. Pseudo non-duality. That's a great. Ego-Advaita. I love it. Ego-Advaita. Yes. Yes. If there's anything you'd like to share, Martin, or any questions, please feel free to type them in now. Ego-Advaita. Oh my God. That is so funny. Yeah, please do. I'll give you a minute or two if you have any questions or things like you want to share. So part of what this person wrote about is how hard it is to leave. And I get it. It is hard to leave. It's very sticky, like any cult is. I've just convinced beyond words Neo-Advaita is a cult. It's not always a physical cult. It's not always connected to an organization, a physical location like most cults are, but it's absolutely a mental cult. And it can be very, very difficult to extricate yourself. I liken it to the Matrix. It's very hard to escape the Matrix. And partially why partially why it's so hard is because the Neo-Advaita teachers falsely see, if you do Neo-Advaita meditation or go to a Neo-Advaita, you'll have a spiritual experience. You'll feel something. Here's where it gets interesting. And then the Neo-Advaita teachers will interpret what you are experiencing and feeling. Their teaching lays an interpretation on top of what the spiritual experience you're having, and then it's just hard to leave because now you have two things. You have the mental teaching, and then all of us who did this, we lay the mental teaching on top of the spiritual experience, and it seems like the spiritual experience confirms the mental teaching, but really the mental teaching is just an interpretation. Oh, Martin put, I heard that a lot of Neo-Advaita folks went offline and deleted their content. Like, if only they all did, Martin. I didn't, I don't so much keep track of specific teachers anymore. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's good news. I'm going to take a look at one of the teachers you mentioned. Well, one of the teachers you mentioned, unfortunately, is still up and garnering a whole lot of views, though not too many. I love it. I love it. I searched for one of them, and I found someone who wrote debunking BS non-duality, and then I found a couple one of the teachers you mentioned, and then the next video I found was debunking BS non-duality, and then stop numbing yourself with non-duality videos. It's so true. Non-duality videos become like a drug. And oh, and then someone else. Anyway, I'm seeing there's all these cool critical responses, which makes me very happy. So that's all I have for today. Thanks everyone for joining in. I hope this is helpful. A little information can go a long way. And part of what makes Neo-Advaita so sticky to pull ourselves out of is we've been brainwashed not to think and to only think in certain ways. Okay, cool. Thanks, Martin. So when just to say it again, Neo-Advaita will tell you, don't think, drop the mind. But then they fill your mind with all sorts of stuff. And so that's where it can get tricky. You're like, see, it's such an amazing defense. It's such an amazing defense because the Neo-Advaita response to what I'm saying is like, oh, that's so mental. Like, drop the mind. But that's really not a genuine response on multiple levels. One of the levels is Neo-Advaita doesn't teach people to drop the mind. It teaches people to it teaches people to just think what the teacher is teaching. And that's not dropping the mind. And to spout it. This person who wrote to me said that they just kind of dedicated their life to Neo-Advaita for like 7 years, and that they could just talk on and on and on and on for hours. And yet I'm sure this person was taught to drop the mind. So it's kind of like one more conflicting teaching from Neo-Advaita. God bless you, Neo-Advaita. All right, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for dropping by. I wish you a Neo-Advaita free day. Take care.